Nimue has captured a zone in your name. Due to her race and class, the zone is granted additional benefits. Havale, Sanctuary of Magic. All allies within this zone are granted the following effects. Passive mana regen plus 150%. Magic damage is doubled. Magic damage ignores 70% of resistances. During combat, allies are granted stacking INT state equal to 5% of Queen's INT. A stack is granted every 20 seconds and stops at 60%. Once per 2 days, designated allies can charge their attack with the power equal to 100% of the Queen's INT stat. Can designate 3 allies for this effect. Reading this, Shiro couldn't help but feel the corner of her eyes twitch. She was still worried about what her maximum power could do considering last time her attack had completely destroyed an event ground, and yet she could now designate 3 people to fire an attack that had equal power to 100% of her int every 2 days. Blinking her eyes, she didn't know if the system wanted her to destroy the world or not. At this rate, it seems like she was on a path of pure carnage. While she was reading this, the zone started to change. Stone arcs started to rise from the ground as the cliff started to extend outwards. Mana lakes started to form around the castle and liquefied mana would flow from the top of the stone arcs, forming waterfalls. Looking at what the zone had become, Shiro had to admit that this was something she would see in the middle of a hidden forest grove that would contain fairies, for example. As for the benefits that the zone brought, it was indeed broken like the zone that Azul had created. While Azul's zone was more survival-orientated, Nimue's was pure offense. Magic damage being doubled, as well as ignoring 70% of resistances, was crazy for everyone else since they didn't have armor and magic ignore skills like she did. Plus, anyone would be able to gain millions of INT stat points the moment they enter combat, since it stacks and scales with her own INT score. Even if they're not tier 6, a tier 5 with this much INT stat would definitely kill one. Last but not least, the benefit of launching an attack equal to 100% of her strength. If one thought about it carefully, everything stacked. 60% of her int, magic damage doubled, ignore 70% resistances, and finally an attack equal to 100% of her int. Should Addie launch something like this, Shiro wasn't sure what would happen. Plus, there was one more move that she could do in order to increase how much it stacked. If she was to activate her berserk skills, ones that would double her stat, and so on, and combine it all, it would be equal to having an army of Shiros activating berserk skills. Shiro had to admit, even for her, the thought of going against an army of herself sent chills down her spine, each one sending a barrage of spells that ignored 70% of her resistances. Since she had proven to be capable of shattering through dimensions with her attacks, running away to the rift was not an option either. I doubt there is a need to do this, but this explains what a pseudo-demigod can accomplish, I suppose. Just 2 zones and the benefits they bring are crazy. At this rate, I don't even need to guard this with specialized units. Just the standard pilots would do for this zone. Shiro muttered to herself as she wondered how she should place everyone. Right now, they have captured 2 zones, so that's 2 tier SIXS out of commission for skirmishes if it does come down to it. But now that she understood their sense of power was slightly skewed, it was clear that she can be a little lax when it comes to other queens. Well, I suppose I can just let everyone rest. If I provoke too many queens, it'll be annoying. I'll deal with this one first before capturing another zone. Shiro shrugged as she sent out a request for the standard pilots to enter the portal through their mechs and guard the second zone, while Maria and Glenn were sent back. Even though Shiro wanted to cultivate Maria's power, it wasn't the right time just yet. Once they start a full-on battle against one of the queens, that'll be when they strike. ####. Looking towards the Havale castle that transformed after the new queen took it over, Monty couldn't help but furrow his brows since the change was too strange. None of the other zones, not even the ones in the center, would change like this except for the one owned by the Dragon Empress. Pulling out a talisman from his inventory, he took a deep breath before lighting it. Slowly, blue runes appeared in the air as everyone saw a silhouette with a pair of glowing blue eyes. "Your Highness," Monty kneeled down. "Seeing as how I had just had all of the contracts broken, I had expected you to be either dead or dying from the consequences. With you being alive and well, can I presume that it's the third outcome? Someone managed to break the contract without activating any of the penalties." The queen narrowed her eyes as Monty nodded his head. "Yes, however, we never got to see the queen herself. Before we knew it, golden runes had formed around us, saving us from an attack and destroying any contract we had. Is that so? Then seeing as how you and everyone else here have contacted me, it seems like you choose to remain by my side." The queen smirked. "Indeed, Your Highness. May I suggest that we perhaps build our forces up and find someone else rather than this queen? We came across the aspect of fire known as a Tesh who killed over 70% of our reinforcements. He claims that he is the son of the goddess, and judging by his power, it is not a lie. If the enemy queen has someone this strong under her command, I don't think it is wise to attack her," Monty warned as the queen stayed silent. "Monty, bring everyone back with you. Since you have brought back important information, I won't blame you. There was a high chance of you dying after all. Once you're back, I want to see you in my office." Hearing this, Monty looked up and saw the communication get cut off. Taking a deep breath and sighing, he glanced at everyone around him. "Seems like we're off the hook this time." He smiled. "But Monty, why does she want you in her office? Could it be that she's considering resetting you?" One of the survivors asked as Monty shook his head. "Don't think about such negative things. Let's just go back for now." Thankfully, it seems like she was in a slightly good mood, so even if she wants to punish me, it would only be light. ####. Ending the communication talisman, the queen narrowed her eyes with a frown. Remembering how many able hands and good contracts that she had just lost, she couldn't help but slam her hand against the armrest. *bang, shattering the armrest. She took a deep breath and crossed her legs. Tapping her fingers against the surface of the table next to her, she closed her eyes before drawing out a crest. The crest was a raven skull pierced by a single sword. 2 torches decorated the side with purple flames as the surroundings seemed to darken. Suddenly, neon blue runes appeared on the floor, forming a magic circle. A single purple flame appeared in the center as it grew in size before manifesting into a phantom of sorts. "Well, my first customer for this event." The merchant grinned as the queen frowned in displeasure. "Since you are the first customer, I'll give you a free service. What information do you wish to know?" he asked with a small chuckle. "I want information on the queen that I have probably just provoked. One that has someone who claims to be the son of the goddess." "Haha, quite the choice. Should you not be my first customer, information on this person would be very pricey. But as you wish, I shall tell you some information on her. The one who claims to be the son of the goddess is speaking the truth, a spirit that has ascended to the state of pseudo-demigod. His mother, also the queen, has a strange divinity that radiates the flavors of creation and destruction. She is both benevolent and merciless. Earn her ire, and it would spell your doom. You can run, you can hide, but she'll find you. And she's quite good at it too. It would be wise not to provoke her any more than you have already. It would be a shame if my first customer was to die so quickly after all." He snickered as the queen furrowed her brows. Thinking about it for a moment, she opened her mouth. "For the proper trade, what would it cost to empower my unique skill so that it can affect her?" "That's quite the request you're asking for. There's not much in this world that can change the thought process of a demigod forcefully. Plus, with the state of the new age, there shouldn't even be a demigod this soon. She's an anomaly, might even become a precious customer for me." The merchant grinned as the queen furrowed her brows. "Just tell me the price." She interrupted since she understood that he's trying to let her understand how extensive this was going to be. "Straightforward. I like it, but I'm not sure if you have the capital for this service. Regardless, I'll tell you the price." He grinned. "I want 60% of the authority that you hold along with a shard of your soul." Hearing this, the queen stood up and glared at the merchant. Her aura flared in relation to her anger. "Since you know what a queen's authority does, you dare ask for 60% of mine?" she asked coldly. "Ha ha ha. Surely you understand that your power is unique. If I want to help you switch up her thought process, I'll need a shard of your soul and 60% of your authority to use your power. I am the only one who can accomplish what you ask of me. And I'll be honest, I'm giving you a discount. If it was anyone else, I would have asked for 90% of their authority. She's not one that you should provoke without care after all." Narrowing her eyes, the queen contemplated for a moment before shaking her head. "Forget it. I can't afford your price. You can look for someone else." She waved her hand in annoyance. She wasn't going to use 60% of her authority in a trade no matter what happens. The moment she did that, everything she worked towards would be wasted. "Why so quick to dismiss me? We can bargain using a different price." "No, you see, I believe you're underestimating me. I've already incurred a loss trying to reclaim a zone. Continuing to fight without a guarantee is foolish, and I'll be caught dead before I hand over 60% of my authority. Even if you want, you can't do anything to me, can you?" God-tier merchant. The queen narrowed her eyes as she flashed in front of him, staring him down. She did not take a single step back, nor did she cower in his presence. Hearing this, the merchant's lips curled up into a grin. Very well. I'm not one to chase after buyers, so it is your loss. After saying his piece, his body scattered into countless feathers as the queen spat in disdain. Sitting back on her throne, she sighed heavily and tilted her head back. Victory is slipping further and further away. I'm not fated to win this, am I? She muttered before closing her eyes. She remembers her teacher's words. The cause justifies the means. No matter what she did, as long as she reaches the end, it will be worth it. However, even after so long, she can't see herself winning at all. Her power was unique, but it was flawed. She couldn't use it on anyone equal to her strength. All that time she had spent cultivating this was wasted. She had no substantial combat power to speak of other than reserving the effects of a few attacks, but even then, that was limited. Shaking her head, she rested for a moment. Your Highness. Nudging the queen slightly, Monty could see that she was quite fatigued in the last few days. After barely being able to claim a zone, it was taken away in a single day. Amen. I must have fallen asleep. Monty, is that you? The queen yawned slightly as Monty kneeled down. Your orders? He asked as she shook her head. There are none. It's over. All of my tier 6 subjects are dead. Say, Monty, you're the strongest one left. Do you think you can take any of them on? She laughed as Monty furrowed his brows before shaking his head. Unfortunately, no, but I wish I could. So do I, Monty, so do I. My dream is drifting further and further away, and the last chance of me being able to do anything comes at a great price as well. 60% of my authority. If I handed that over, all hope of realizing my dream would be over. Though, I suppose my current situation is more or less the same. She shook her head as Monty stayed silent. Your contract has been broken, so there's no need for you to stay. I don't have a single tier 6 left, so I'm effectively out of the new age. I have no substantial combat prowess to speak of, and even the weakest queen can eliminate me if I'm not careful. I'll release the contracts I have on everyone else. Take them and leave. If you say that you've managed to rebel and break their contracts, they'll see you as their leader. Try to survive out there if you can. The queen shook her head as Monty stood up. Looking down at the queen, he paused for a moment before turning around and leaving. Seeing his back going further and further away, she unconsciously reached out but halted herself. Once he left, she flicked her finger and closed the door. Leaning on her chair, she glanced towards Varish Lyre that had its night sky lit up by the crests of the queens. She didn't know how long had passed, but she eventually shook her head. Just as she stood up, the door slammed open as she glanced back only to see Monty standing in the doorway. I've already sent them away with someone else acting as their leader. Monty reported as the queen looked at him with a puzzled expression. I thought I had said for you to be their leader. Are you not the most capable person here? She asked. Perhaps, but my job is not to lead them, but rather stay by your side. I might not be the sharpest sword, but I am a sword willing to be used by you. You saved my life, so it's only natural I serve you with everything I have. Monty kneeled as a tier 5 magic circle appeared beneath him. Recognizing it to be a magic circle for binding contracts, she furrowed her brows. You realize what you are doing, right? She asked as he nodded. I do, but I am willing. No matter what you want to do, no matter how hard it will get, I will stand by your side and guard you to my last breath. Heis, idiot, causing your own death like this. Shaking her head, she snapped her finger and the contract was canceled. There's no need for contracts. If you want to stand by me, just come along. I suppose I'll just wander around for a bit while watching everything else happen. There's no more chance of me winning anyways. I'm too far behind. She smiled as Monty nodded. ####. Setting up the defenses for both zones, Shiro sat in the command office and checked on everything that had happened in the zones during this day. Out of the 15 zones, she has now occupied 2. The Beast Queen has occupied 1 main zone and 2 sub-zones. The Dragon Empress still ruled over one of the main zones, and no one had attacked her at all, which made sense since it was practically delivering yourself as EXP to her doorstep. So far, the 4 main zones are captured by Cyrodiil, Theria, and 2 unknown queens. I have 2 small zones which are the same amount of Theria, while everyone else has captured 1 zone with a single exception, but they're too far north for me to worry about just yet. The rest of the queens are building up their power for an attack later in the week. The closest queen to me right now is the one with the eye and the crest, but there hasn't been any movements. Shiro thought to herself as she glanced at the holographic map. You seem stressed. Nantian said as he entered the command room on his wheelchair. On his lap was a tray with some food. Placing it on the table, he glanced towards her. A little, just thinking about keeping up with the points while also not making myself a giant target. Seems a little hard. Shiro shrugged. Creating a fork, she grabbed some of the meat and put it in her mouth. So, I think we should just take it easy tomorrow. Reinforce what we have while keeping an eye out. Shiro shrugged. Sounds pretty good. Also, Sylvia managed to get a slight breakthrough. Nantian smiled. What kind of breakthrough? One that reduces the impact of backlashes. I don't have as many berserk skills as you do, so it wouldn't have taken me a long time to recover to begin with, but with Sylvia's help, I'm back in fighting form. Nantian chuckled as he stood up and leaned against the table. Flicking his fingers, light started to gather around his hands. Che, I was hoping to see you in that wheelchair some more, but this is good also. Shiro smiled and dismissed the wheelchair. Chatting to each other for a bit, they rested for the night. Stretching her body, Shiro looked at Nantian, who stood opposite her. Since they were resting for the day, Shiro decided to spar with Nantian for a bit, since he had just recovered from his injuries. As for the zones that she had captured, she distributed tasks to everyone to keep them busy. Plus, they're also helping with the defenses of the zones, so it was killing two birds with one stone. What's Misu up to? I haven't seen her today. Nantian asked as he created a few weapons of light and twirled them around. Misu? I had her organize her own group within the city. Since we're now in an alliance, it's good for her to build some influence in the city. I'm not sure about what kind of group she wants to make though, since Sylvia is already in charge of the healers. While she used to be healer, she is now a necromancer. Shiro shrugged her shoulders. I'm not sure she'll want to teach necromancy since it could be abused. Even if it was unlikely with the people in this city, you never know. Nantian said as Shiro nodded her head. True. I'll see what she's planning later anyways. I also need her to create an anchor here so that I can increase the power produced within this city. With more anchors, I'll be able to prepare better defenses. That way, even if someone does discover this city and launch an attack, they'll be destroyed with ease. I'm sure that's already the case considering what we have for defenses. Nantian chuckled. Shrugging her shoulders, Shiro summoned a sword. Ready? Of course. Start whenever you want. ####. The spar was simple, nothing intense. It was merely something to help them move around a little before the real test. Since they were taking a day off, Shiro wanted to finally achieve the power of pausing time. She has done it in a chamber. All that's left is to achieve it in combat. Helian's still making some adjustments for my sword, so it'll take a while. But for now, I'll try to carve my own runes in this. Shiro smiled as she adjusted her grip. Suddenly, golden runes flared against the blade edge. Dashing forward, she inserted mana into the blade and tried to complete the spell in an instant. Several Tier 8 magic circles appeared on the surface as Shiro swung towards Nantian. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnovel world.com. Trying to complete the calculations, she couldn't help but flinch when she felt the mana start going berserk. Before her blade could even reach Nantian, it shattered apart as due to the failed spell. Quickly taking a few steps back, she created a second sword to parry Nantian's counter-strike. Well, that went just swell, didn't it? Shiro forced a smile. MN, perhaps you should try it without moving around first. It's already hard enough for you to do it in a large open space compared to a sealed room, much less while you move. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro sighed and agreed. This was something that even Kronos had a little trouble with considering the mana consumption, so it was only natural that she wasn't going to achieve it in an instant. If she was being honest, it was a miracle that she even achieved it for her chamber. Creating another sword, she etched the runes along the surface once more. Closing her eyes, her mana flared as Tier 8 magic circles appeared once more. Now that she wasn't moving around, it was a little easier, but it was still hard to keep things contained. Furrowing her brows, sweat dripped down her face. One by one, the Tier 8 magic circles sparked to life as they were completed. Right. One more, and I show dash. Before she could even finish her thought, her sword transformed into a bomb from the mana that was gathered inside and threatened to explode. Quickly throwing it in the air, she created a barrier around the two of them. Boom. Watching her sword explode and shake the entire training hall, Shiro identified the problem. For the chamber, the power was spread evenly across a large sealed room, so it wasn't difficult to activate. However, this time, she's trying to use something as small as a sword to delay time in a large open space. Even with her nanobots, which are demigod level, it was still difficult to contain the power required to pause time. Unless I reach Tier 8, It'll be hard to create a sword that'll be S dash. Pausing for a moment, Shiro looked up at Nantian. Is something wrong? Nantian asked, but Shiro shook her head. Nope, nothing is wrong. In fact, things couldn't be better. She grinned. You see, the problem I have now is I don't have a good container for this power, and I don't want to use my body as one since it'll definitely harm me. But as I am right now, my nanobots cannot contain this power in the form of a small sword. However, I have the best container for this power. Shiro laughed. My indestructible rainbow-grade sword that's under Helian's care right now. Since it's indestructible, I can load it with as much energy as I want without worrying that it'll blow up in my face. So even if Helion doesn't upgrade it, I should be able to cast the spell using that blade. She explained as they made their way towards Helian's office. Would you be able to handle the calculations then? We don't know what will happen if we have unstable energy within an indestructible container. If you fail at casting the spell, things will most likely go south. The moment a channel opens between you and the sword, that energy might lash out at you. Nantian asked as Shiro thought about it for a moment. I do have a few precautions regarding that, but if it is like what you said, I can just open a channel outwards. Then it becomes an empowered attack. No. Shiro grinned as Nantian sighed. Nice. Even though you're taking steps to avoid harming your body, you're still putting yourself in danger by trying things that should be impossible. Well, no pain, no gain. I didn't get to where I am today without any risks after all. Shiro chuckled as Nantian had to admit that she was right. Without any risks, she wouldn't have achieved some of the feats they know her for. Arriving outside of Helian's office, Shiro knocked on the door and noticed that there was a barrier in place that sealed everything inside the room. Raising an eyebrow, she couldn't help but wonder what he was doing inside for him to require something like this. Just before she could even knock, the walls surrounding the office started to bulge. Both Shiro and Nantian looked at the now swelling walls in confusion. What the dash? Asterisk, boom. Before she could even curse, the wall exploded as Helian's figure flew past them, slamming against the walls, shattering the windows. He quickly jumped back on his feet. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnovelworld.com. Alright, you little sh*t. Just because you're a rainbow-grade item doesn't mean you can rebel like this. He snapped, storming back into the office. Flames and mana continued to explode from the gap in the wall. The F***ck was that? Shiro couldn't help but ask, seeing the hole in the tower. Seems like he's having some trouble with the sword? Nantian raised an eyebrow. Quickly fixing the walls, Shiro glanced into the office and saw Helion surround himself with golden flames and a giant hammer. She watched as he started combat, with the sword on the table. Each swing of his hammer would cause sparks to fly in the sky, seeing the golden runes slowly being etched into the blade. Shiro couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. However, just as he finished one rune, the force launched him outside of the barrier once more. F***ck, are you okay? Shiro asked as Helion glanced up. I didn't see you there. Sorry, I'm just having a bit of trouble with the last few parts. It was fine earlier, but it's getting harder now. I'll be honest, I don't think I can carve all the runes you wanted me to. Just 2, and it's already launched me away twice. Helion sighed. Upgrading a rainbow relic truly isn't easy. I think you can just take it now. I don't have the strength or capability to etch more on for now. Every rune I add on only increases its resistance. Hearing this, Shiro waved her hand and summoned the sword to her side. Seeing the description, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. Sylvanes, Executioner Blade of the Goddess. Rainbow. Upgrade in progress. 3%. Seeing the line beneath the title, Shiro didn't expect that he would actually upgrade it. When she wanted him to carve some runes, it was just so that she could cast spells easier. But there's now a chance that Sylvanes could become something stronger than just rainbow grade. Blinking her eyes in surprise, she watched as Helion extinguished the flames before falling asleep on the sofa. With Helion now sleeping peacefully, Shiro couldn't help but shake her head. Making a blanket for him, she fixed the walls before stepping out of the room. Are you sure you don't want to heal him before you go? He was launched out of the room after all. Nantian asked as Shiro shook her head. Nope, he's being looked after by a god after all. Shiro smiled as she gestured towards Helion. Glancing over, Nantian could see a crest on the back of his hand as golden energy radiated to the rest of his body. The crest was quite simple, a hammer with flames behind it, but Nantian knew who it belonged to. He already had a good connection to Hephaestus from what we've seen before, but it seems like he's become his proper pupil now. Hephaestus is even sharing some of his energy with Helion. The golden energy is divine energy that's repairing and tempering his body, making it better than ever. Shiro explained as she could see the movement of divine energy within Helian's body. In that case, then we shouldn't disturb him then. Nantian chuckled. Yup. Leaving the room, Shiro made sure everything was repaired before making her way back to the training hall. Now that she had her sword back, she wanted to give making the spell another go. Entering the training hall, Shiro took a deep breath and looked at the 2 runes already carved into the blade itself. Closing her eyes, she stabbed her sword down, and divine energy exploded out of her body. Right now, with her capacity for divine energy, she can only cast a few origin spells and enhance a handful of normal spells. If she was to burn it all to make this time-stop ability, it could prove to be a great assassination weapon. The only downside would be that she won't be able to use divine energy for the rest of the day, which means using the godly runes would be difficult. Remembering the right runes that she needed to use, golden energy weaved together on the blade. No, this won't work, she thought with a frown. She didn't even need to continue to see that the energy inside was too unstable right now. Trying to slow time to a halt was no easy task, and it required careful precision or else she'll slow herself down, opening her to a lethal attack. Stomping down, she twisted her body and swung out with her blade. Asterisk bang. Suddenly, a crescent blade of energy exploded forth from her sword, carving deep into her tier 7 nanobots. I might not have succeeded in activating the spell, but this will be handy to know. Shiro muttered. If this attack could shred through her nanobots like they were nothing, she knew the offense power was not to be underestimated. Is there anything I can help with? Nantian asked as Shiro shrugged her shoulders. Not sure, but we can certainly discuss it. Right now I'm having trouble with actually stabilizing the surroundings enough so that I can pause time. The flow of time is constantly moving, so trying to delay it even by a moment is a monumental task. In the chamber, I had managed to stop it since it was similar to a small pool of water. But now, what I'm doing is akin to delaying the flow of a never-ending waterfall the size of Earth. Shiro sighed as she leaned back. Well, from the sound of it, you're trying to control your surroundings. Why don't you try threading yourself into that delayed time? If you're having trouble stretching it out, wedge yourself inside it and force it to stretch out. Nantian suggested. He wasn't sure about the details, but to him this made sense. I can certainly give it a go. ####. What? No, let me slaughter that little sh**t. Kronos jumped up from his seat in shock. Gripping his hair, he glared at Nantian with a murderous gaze. What's wrong? Nyx asked as she was currently feeding Hemera some food. Both of them were watching the screen and wasn't sure what was wrong. This little sh**t is about to kill Shiro. You see, delaying time is fine since you're just rerouting the path, making it so that it takes longer to reach the destination. What the little sh**t just suggested, threading yourself in it, is akin to trying to drown yourself. If she does that, there's a good chance that she'll age in a blink of an eye and fade to ash. Kronos slammed his hand down. Crack! Breaking the trunk of a tree that she had just grown, Gaia turned around. What did you just say? Gaia shouted out as she quickly stormed. If we don't stop them, she'll kill herself. Kronos repeated as everyone dropped what they were doing. ####. Thinking about the runes that she might need, Shiro added some safety nets before telling Nantian to step back. Raising her sword, golden energy started to gather around her. However, before she could even do anything else, her vision was bombarded by notifications. Goddess Gaia warns Shiro to stop. Kronos screams at Shiro to stop what she is trying to do and suggests strangling the one known as Nantian for suggesting something like this. Goddess Nyx points at the notifications above and tells Shiro to read them. Gaia shouts in indignation. If you're going to do this, at least marry me first. Auranas coughs up blood at Gaia's proclamation. Seeing the messages popping up one after another, Shiro couldn't help but massage her eyes. Each of the messages would have taken a toll to send, and yet they're sending things like arguments between them. Gaia kicks Auranas away and shouts, "Don't get in the way of my new happy marriage life." What happened? Nantian asked as Shiro was about to open her mouth, but Kronos was a step faster. Between them, a system notice appeared as both of them could see this message. God Kronos tells Nantian to shut your ass up and stop suggesting dumb sh**t. Staring at the message, the corner of Shiro's lips started to twitch as she felt the urge to smack Kronos across the head. What did I do wrong? I think Nantian's suggestion is logical now, Shiro asked as she immediately received a response. The most up-to-date novels are published on lightnovel world.com. God Kronos explains that if you were to thread yourself through time, you are trying to become part of it. It means you don't get to halt it, but rather get dragged along with it. Meaning, you could age in a single instant and become a thing of the past. If you really want to thread yourself into the flow of time, the best way would be to ride it as though it was a wave. You need something to separate yourself from the actual flow so that you don't get dragged away by it. Reading this, Shiro couldn't help but feel cold sweat down her back. If she proceeded with their idea, she might have actually lost her life. However, her main concern was no longer on the fact that she almost messed up, but rather what Kronos had mentioned. You said that I needed something to keep myself separated from the flow. What would that thing be? God Kronos mentions that it's just a theory, having something that can withstand dash. God Kronos pauses. Seeing this, Shiro understood that Kronos realized what she had in her hand. Would the indestructible sword work as that thing to keep me from being dragged away? Shiro asked. God Kronos nods his head in agreement. If you were to use that sword as the point of separation, no matter how much the flow of time wants to drag you away, you'll be safe. This is just a theory, so you should still be careful. There hasn't been a time where he has come in contact with something that is indestructible, so it's unknown whether or not this method could work. Well, are you able to give me a percentage on the chance of it succeeding? God Kronos says that there should be a 75% chance of you succeeding, but it's still going to be rough. Unless you use the eyes that you have been blessed with, the success rate will drop down to a meager 20%. Tapping her chin, Shiro thought about what she should do with this information. The drain of her eyes combined with using the runes would drain her dry in an instant. Trying to keep her eyes activated for a long time is practically impossible. Furrowing her brows, Shiro realized something. Kronos, you know that my sword is indestructible, right? What if I allow this to thread itself into the flow of time without worrying that it'll be destroyed? Would I be able to use the previous method but with this sword instead? Shiro asked with a grin. God Kronos contemplates about the possibility and nods his head. However, he suggests that you allow him to assist you and make sure you're not dragged away with the sword. Seeing this, Shiro's eyes flickered with excitement. Accepting Kronos' help, Shiro watched as Tier 8 magic circles appeared around her. Goodness, I haven't used my avatar much, but this feels rather strange. Kronos muttered with a frown as his figure appeared in front of Shiro. Right then, we have only a limited amount of time, so let's get started. As for the little sh*t that almost killed you, step to the side. I won't be able to help you if you get dragged along. Kronos scoffed as Nantion scratched his head embarrassingly and took a few steps back. Now, don't be like that, Kronos. He didn't know. Shiro chuckled as Kronos only shrugged before looking towards Shiro. Can you hand me your sword for a second? I want to make some small adjustments to the runes so that it can suit what we require better. Since your friend has already etched too, it's easier for me to edit the runes. Nodding her head, Shiro handed her sword to Kronos. Let's see. These runes aren't bad, but they're limited. All that you're doing is putting all the stress into your sword rather than using it as a guiding tool. A lot of the potential is buried right now since you're using it as a crutch rather than in your terms, a gun. Kronos explained as divine energy radiated from his body. Creating a pin of light in his hands, he started to adjust the runes. Like a conductor, you want to use this sword/baton to guide your surroundings. Use it to control the flow of time. If you want it to bend, it will bend, but you cannot force it to do something against its nature. Urge it gently and don't fight it. Now give it a go. Kronos smiled as he handed the sword back. Nodding her head, Shiro closed her eyes before opening them with the runes now glowing. Slowly, the strands of time appeared in her vision as the runes on her sword lit up with a bright golden hue. Tracing her finger along the face of the blade, she started to complete the magic circles while observing the strands. Your time with the eyes is short, so remember their positions. Use your sword to guide the strands that you want into place. Do not cut with the sword, but rather push the strand representing the present. Kronos guided as he watched the changes carefully. Adjusting the magic circle with every word that Kronos said, Shiro realized that there was no longer as much resistance as before. Each magic circle seemed to complete itself in an instant with just a simple gesture which corrects its position. While making sure the runes are correct along with the coordinates, it is also fine to move the sword into an optimal place so that she didn't need to waste more time crafting new runes and messing up the whole process. Naturally, it was still difficult since they didn't want to risk Shiro's body. Whenever things looked like they were about to go out of control, Kronos would separate Shiro from the sword and allow it to discharge all of the energy that it had gathered. Wrong, wrong, wrong. You're putting too much emphasis on wrestling the flow of time to do what you want. The more you wrestle with it, the harder it becomes. Urge it gently. During his lectures, Kronos' body would flicker before stabilizing once more thanks to the energy that the other gods are providing. Seeing that everyone was trying their hardest, Shiro wanted to complete this soon, since keeping Kronos' avatar here was definitely difficult. Even for 5 primordial gods, Goddess Gaia said, "Do not worry. Just focus on studying the old man's teachings." Reading this, Shiro couldn't help but smile. Looking at all the runes on the sword, Shiro realized that a few of them didn't even need to be constructed later. She just needed to use a part of the runes already carved into the sword to recreate it. Realizing that this was possible, Shiro's movements became smoother as Kronos' gaze flickered. With each movement and magic circle she completes, the flow of time would shift ever so slightly. It was small, but this was progress. Whenever she was close to running out of mana, Nantion and Kronos would help her resupply to keep her eyes activated. Doing some final adjustments to her sword so that it could recreate some other runes, Shiro felt something click in her mind. Her thought process on how this should work shifted as she now understood where she had gone wrong. Realizing that it was her passive skill, Item Master, activating due to the sword meeting the requirements, Shiro couldn't help but smile. Closing her eyes, she focused her mind. Deep within her mana realm, in the land of red circuits and code, a single tree started to stir as runic patterns emerged on the ground around it. At the same time this happened, Shiro's right arm that was holding the sword started to change. A layer of black metal and red circuits coated her arm and connected to the sword. The golden runes shifted to a dark red color as Shiro opened her eyes. Taking a step forward, all of the runes on her sword lit up simultaneously as the circuits created the remaining runes that the magic circle needed. Flooding her divine energy into her sword, the space around her started to twist. Suddenly, a pulse of energy exploded out from her sword as both Nantion and Kronos felt their movements turn sluggish for a moment. In the next moment, Nantion completely halted while Kronos could still move, albeit barely. Seeing Shiro dashing towards him, he understood that she succeeded in slowing time down to a near halt. But for powerful beings, this little bit of time dilation was nothing since he could still move. However, Shiro wasn't done. Adjusting the grip on the sword, all of the runes shifted as a second pulse of energy exploded out. This time Kronos realized that he had blanked out for a moment before snapping back to reality. Seeing that Shiro had appeared behind him, he couldn't help but feel cold sweat down his back as not even he knew what happened. After all, before he could register everything in his eyes, he had blanked out for a moment. As expected of a god, "I can't even anchor you down for more than a fraction of a second," Shiro muttered as the pulses of energy were immediately sucked back into the sword. Shattering to pieces, the black metal and circuits detached themselves from Shiro's arm as she couldn't help but kneel down in fatigue. In that short moment, her mana was drained dry. What just happened? Who do you mean by anchor? Kronos couldn't help but ask curiously. Even as a god of time, he didn't know what happened since he couldn't perceive it. "So you know how you said that time was forever moving, right?" Shiro asked as Kronos nodded. "I had the idea that if I could pin someone down to the flow, their time will go to the past during the time that they are pinned. However, this was much harder than I expected and practically impossible until you told me to use my runic eyes. By strapping a strand of the present to your body, your entire being became the past in the next few moments, stopping you from perceiving your future, or rather, my present, for a short amount of time. During this gap, I should be able to assassinate a person or two before the strand loosens and you're launched back to the new present." Shiro explained as Kronos widened his eyes. The reason why he couldn't perceive what had happened was because it was forcefully rewritten as something that should belong to the past. She had metaphorically killed him for a moment before his core corrected everything. If it was someone much, much weaker than her, she could even permanently keep them secured to the flow. Feeling a sense of excitement in his heart, he was about to say something before his avatar started to disassemble itself. Clicking his tongue in annoyance, he could only sigh as his vision shifted back to his body. Seeing the exhausted look of the others around him, he shook his head. "She's created something rather insane," he muttered. "What do you mean?" Gaia asked as she was too exhausted to understand what just happened. "Even though it was short, she made me, the god of time, a historical figure rather than a living god. I became locked as a piece of the past, meaning I could no longer be in the present." If she was more powerful, she might have been able to make this a permanent change. Kronos laughed as he glanced up at the sky. I'm going to seclude myself for a while. I want to experiment with some new ideas that she had given me. Seeing Kronos walk away, Gaia glanced towards Shiro and smiled. Did she just teach a god new tricks in his domain of power? She muttered. Now that Kronos had left, Shiro laid on her back and looked at the ceiling of the training hall. Heis. The drain of this move is a little ludicrous. I get that it's supposed to be something limited to gods and my method is pushing the boundaries, but draining me completely dry of a mana is a little over the top now, isn't it? Shiro asked as Nantion chuckled. Perhaps, but where else have you seen anyone else accomplish the same as you have this early? Nantion asked as Shiro sat up. Surprisingly, I have. There was this guy in one of the dungeons, a guy named Bon. He was able to stop time and save me from one of the stronger monsters inside. Shiro replied. Oh, that's a surprise. Nantion raised an eyebrow since he didn't think anyone else could use time like Shiro does at this stage. Talking for a little longer, Shiro glanced over at her system since she had received notification when she completed the skill. New origin skill created. You are able to delay time to a near halt for a short period of time. You can also pin them to the present, causing them to become the past. The effects of this vary depending on their resistances. Cost: 25% of divine energy plus 80% of mana can be changed depending on capacity of divine energy. Duration: 2 seconds. Can be extended, but cost increases substantially. Cooldown: 15 seconds. Would you like to name your skill? Reading the skill description, Shiro raised an eyebrow. Even with my mana regeneration, I can only cast this skill 5 times a day thanks to how much divine energy I have and the divine energy regen. But setting that aside for now, Nantion, do you have an idea on what to call this? Shiro asked as Nantion scratched his head for a moment. Maybe something like Chrono Shift? I don't know, since you won't be shouting it out during battle now, would you? Nantion replied as Shiro shrugged. Well, it's just something that's good for me to keep track of in my mind. If I want to cast this spell without the system, I would need to have a firm image of it in my mind. A good way for that is to classify the skill under a good name, so the moment I want to use it, I can find the spell immediately. Shiro explained as Nantion tapped his chin. Why don't we just call it something simple then? A single word rather than 2. Nantion suggested as Shiro nodded her head. Sure, that might be good. What about dash? Before she could even finish her sentence, she watched as the system screen flickered. User took too long to choose. Skill: Time Flux. Added to your skill list. Staring at the system screen with a blank expression, Shiro felt like she wanted to grab it like a table and slam it on the ground. I was about to come up with a name for it. She shouted in her mind as Time Flux was now added to her skill list. Now there was a new section on her status that displayed her new skill under the category of origin spells. Is there something wrong? Nantion asked as he noticed her expression change several times before stopping at fatigue. Yeah. Just that the system decided to name it Time Flux before I could have my say in it. Shiro shook her head, but let's ignore that for now. Let's see how this skill works after being recognized by the system. Summoning her sword, golden runes appeared on the blade as Shiro activated Time Flux. The runes in her eyes flickered as the time strands revealed themselves in front of her. Similar to last time, a pulse of energy expanded out as Shiro could see that Nantion stopped mid-movement. Walking up to him, she started to move his body around. Understanding that she only had a 2-second window, she quickly moved back to her spot. Once the time limit was reached, the pulse of energy retracted itself. Stumbling a little, Nantion could feel Shiro adjusting his body in that split moment. I'll be honest, if it wasn't for the fact that you had shifted my position, I would have thought that everything was just a hallucination. Nantion muttered. Wait, you could feel what I did to you? Shiro asked in surprise as he nodded. Yes, but it happened in an instant. It was like a snap of a finger, then it disappeared. Interesting. Shiro tapped her chin. She doubted that she could use it for torture since it'll take too long to register the pain. She'd rather torture them slowly and let them feel each moment with clarity than it being over in a flash. Of course, this method was also pretty good if she wanted to mess with one of the queens. Every time they blink, they could lose a limb before finally being killed. Discussing some of the possibilities for a while, the two of them made their way towards the food hall since they've been sparring for a while now. Enjoying the food slowly, Shiro wondered what else she wanted to do for the rest of the day. Since they were taking the day off, she didn't need to worry about attacking or fighting in skirmishes. She wasn't in the mood to play a flute or discover more juices to make. To put it bluntly, Shiro felt bored now that she had completed her goal of pausing time. "What's up?" Nantion asked, seeing Shiro being silent. "Just wondering about what to do. I had figured that I might use the whole day for this skill, so I didn't exactly plan anything. What do most people do in their spare time?" Shiro asked curiously as Nantion thought about it for a moment. "They mostly browse the net, play with friends, be lazy, or do whatever comes to mind. If you want a break, just do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be productive." Nantion shrugged. I kinda just feel lazy then. Maybe I should slack." Shiro muttered. "That might be the call. You've been stressed out for a while now with things happening left and right. Perhaps it's a good time for you to just relax for the day, but I don't want to just sleep it off. Feels like a waste." Shiro pouted as she stabbed her fork against the meat repeatedly. "In that case, then do you want to see what everyone else is doing?" Sure. I am curious as to what Addie and Een are doing since those two are like two peas in a pod right now." Shiro chuckled as she quickly finished the rest of her meal. Sending out her senses, it was quite easy for her to discover where the two of them are. They were both in the main building of the food hall that Een had created, and it seemed like there was an event of sorts happening. Both Een and Addie were surrounded by a group of people, and they were in the center, disguising themselves as to not draw attention for now. Shiro and Nantion entered the building only to witness the sight of a whole hall of people cheering. "Big sis, today I will defeat you." Atesh narrowed his eyes as Een only smirked. "Who do you think I am? Do you really think you can challenge me in this area of expertise? Let me tell you, in this entire city, there is no one, and I mean no-one, that can defeat me when it comes to this." Een grinned. Hearing this, Shiro figured that they were probably competing whose fire was better. Seeing how many people were around, Shiro felt a headache since it could be horrible should things go south. Just as she walked up closer, she paused in disbelief as she should have expected something like this. Sitting around a giant table, both Addie and Een were surrounded by food as Addie seemed a little pale. Empty plates littered around him as he was currently trash-talking his big sis while trying to eat another plate of food. As for Een, she was doing the same, only this time she was much more relaxed. Her eating habits were both graceful yet completely disgusting to Shiro. Each time Een reached out for a plate, it would be emptied in an instant. No crumb would be left, but Shiro could see everything that happened clearly. Een would clean that plate as if she was a Hoover, no? Even better than a Hoover, since a Hoover would leave some traces of food. Is this how she spends her free time? Shiro asked in disbelief as Nantion laughed. It would seem so. Seeing Addie raise a white flag for surrender, Shiro watched as Een jumped on the table before shouting, "I am the food queen, devourer of delicacies. Naive brother of mine. Realize your foolishness in challenging me. Let me smack some sense into that bird." With Een cheering on the table and Addie resting his head, feeling as though he was about to throw up, Shiro facepalmed. She wanted to interrupt, but since they looked like they were having fun, Shiro decided not to rain on their parade. "Let's go." Shiro sighed. "I thought you wanted to smack some sense into that bird." Nantion raised an eyebrow as Shiro shrugged. "I'll do it later. It would be quite bad if I smacked her in front of all these people now, wouldn't it?" Shiro gestured at the hall full of food lovers chanting Yin's name while she made purple fire dance to her will. Seeing that Een was taking her celebration to the next level, Shiro decided that it was probably best to humble her a little. Snapping her finger, all of the fire flickered for a moment before disappearing. Amen. Blinking her eyes in confusion, Een looked down at her hand. "That's strange," she muttered. "Where are the flames?" Someone shouted out as a few others agreed. "Che, you want flames? I'll give you flames." Een pouted slightly as she activated a Tier 5 magic circle. However, before it could activate, the flames were snuffed out in an instant. Scratching her head, Een did a quick checkup of herself. "How come there are no flames?" Een muttered in confusion, trying to conjure up some fire once more. It was snuffed out as Een felt a pair of eyes glare at her. Sensing a chill down her spine, she immediately recognized who was glaring at her. She didn't even need to turn around as she quickly straightened herself out. "All right, enough messing around. Everyone get back to work. We have important business to do," Een shouted out. "But Guildmaster, you said that we're partying for a few days now? Plus, did we even do anything important to begin with?" Someone asked as Een felt like strangling that guy. "Yes, we do. We need to discover the delicacies of the world and improve life on Asharia." Een coughed. "But didn't you say that this guild was created to feed you?" "I mean, we all agreed since it seemed pretty fun and we're mostly just chefs." The same person replied as Een held back the urge to smack him over the head. "I'm going to die if you keep talking," she shouted out in her mind. "URG. Big sis, Do we have to do work? I thought you said we were just going to party all day. Atesh sighed as he sat up. Seeing that Addy had now spoken up, Een didn't want to lie to him. They were indeed going to party. But if they keep partying, someone whose name and preferences beginning with S will slaughter them. However, if her younger brother wanted to party, then party they shall. Yes, we are. Our important business is to clean up first so that we can let loose later once everything is prepared. Een explained as Addy nodded. You heard big sis. Everyone, let's get packing. Addy waved his hand as there were some complaints in the crowd, but everyone started to help out. Quickly camouflaging herself and walking over to Shiro, Een swallowed nervously. Cough. Hey mum, Een said meekly as Shiro crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow. Hey, what brings you here today? Een asked with a forced smile. I was just curious as to what was happening. But it seems like you're enjoying yourself quite a bit, huh? The food hall was created just to feed you now, was it? Shiro asked with a smile. That's slander. He's just making stuff up. Of course, the food hall is used to research more food for the rest of the city to enjoy. Een replied as her eyes darted around for anyone that could help. Seeing Nantion, her eyes flickered, begging for help. She's not wrong. Most of the people in the food hall are chefs, and they have their own restaurants. The dishes that get Yin's seal of approval are the ones that sell out the fastest in the restaurants, since everyone knows that Een has a good taste for food. Since she's your daughter too, her word has some weight behind it. Nantion sighed as he covered for Een, raising an eyebrow. Shiro glanced back at Nantion. Asterisk cough. Don't mind me. I'm just a spectator. Oh look, what a diligent lad cleaning up. Nantion corrected himself as he turned around. Traitor, Een cried out in her mind. Understanding the feeling of Een who was glaring at him right now, Nantion could only give her a silent prayer in his heart. Sorry, but your mother is too goddamn scary. I don't want to be receiving her ire. Massaging her eyes, Shiro placed a hand on Yin's shoulder. Darling, yes mother dearest. Why don't we have a small chat in the training hall? I'm sure you're also eager to reach tier 6, right? Despite having the power, what level are you right now? Shiro asked with a smile. Cough. I'm almost the dash. What level are you, darling? Shiro narrowed her eyes whilst maintaining her smile. 349 after the last fight. Een muttered quietly. Only 349? What level is everyone else in our party? Shiro gasped in surprise. Higher than 400. Een replied as a silent tear dripped down her cheek. She knew that she'll be training her ass off after this. Goodbye food, goodbye party, goodbye luxuries. This bird cannot keep you company after today. Oh my, higher than 400? Surely, if my daughter is such a hard worker, she wouldn't fall behind this much now, would she? No. So why is it that you're only 349? Where did all that food go? Surely you're eating this much because you need energy for the fights, right? Woo. Fine, I'm a gluttonous slacker. I'll go and work hard. Een cried as tears rolled down her cheeks. URG, give up those fake crocodile tears. Do you really think that'll work? Shiro clicked her tongue as Een sighed and wiped away her tears. Che. And here I was spending some of my time mastering the art of crying on command. If I use this on my guild members, they'll cook another round of food immediately. Een pouted as Shiro grabbed her head and turned it towards her. That's only because of your mother's looks. If you didn't look this adorable, would people pity you and give you food? Yes, because my other mother is also adorable. Een grinned as Shiro was speechless. Che, go find your sister. She's training right now, so the two of you can go get some levels while looking for that last piece that you need. Shiro sighed as Een nodded her head. I'll be honest, Mom. No joking around this time, but I would have been tier 6 sooner if I could actually find this last piece. The location keeps changing, and it's not exactly easy to keep a track of it. Een sighed. Go look for Misu and ask her. She's got a good information network, so she might have some useful information for you. MN alright. Also, stop making your brother a slacker too. Shiro sighed as Een stuck out her tongue and escaped into the rift. Feeling as though her vein was about to burst, a tier 8 magic circle appeared around Shiro's wrist as she punched forward. Asterisk ping. A crack suddenly formed in the air as Shiro pulled her hand back. Dragging Een out of the rift, Shiro glared at her while everyone else looked towards them since there was now a fracture in the space in front of them. Well, this is certainly different. Mom, when did you learn how to break through dimensions to grab me? Een asked with a forced smile. When you were too busy stuffing yourself. Now, will you promise me that you'll be a good role model for your brother rather than just being a glutton? Shiro asked as Een pouted and sighed. Fine, I promise I won't urge him to become a glutton like me. Good, you can go back now. Shiro nodded before shoving Een back into the fracture. Hey, why dash? Before she could even complain, the fracture sealed up, ending her sentence. Anyways, let's go. Shiro dusted her hands off as she turned around and left the food hall. Shaking his head with a small smile, Nantion followed behind her. So what's the plan for the rest of your day? Nantion asked since Shiro seemed to have a goal now. I'm going to build a satellite system to gather information from around the world. If E needs to find that last piece, I'll use the satellites to track it down using the same energy signal. I've already succeeded in breaking through the barriers to get to space, so it shouldn't be too hard to launch a few satellites. Plus, I might even send up some proper orbital cannons this time. They're most effective from space after all. Shiro shrugged as Nantion smiled. Even though it wasn't exactly relaxing, it was still better than going out and fighting all day. It was just like Shiro to spend her day off in this manner. Making their way back to the command center, Shiro sat down and brought up several screens. Let's see, with the world being many times bigger than it was before, I'll probably need more than 10,000 satellites orbiting this world for it to get me proper coverage of this whole world. It'll give me a good view of every continent, country, and weird location that might be viewable from space. Plus, I can probably look for where that dragon went after destroying the gate to the beyond. Shiro muttered. True, finding stuff in this world would also be so much easier, since the event locations will increase in mana density. Just a quick scan should tell you where the next event is so that you can prepare beforehand. Nantion agreed. MN. Most importantly, I can find new gates to the beyond as well as a queen's main city if they're not careful with the defenses they put down. Shiro smiled as she tapped her fingers against the table. Designing the satellites shouldn't be too hard. I've already got a few blueprints. In terms of energy usage, would the sun be enough? Shiro tapped her finger because she didn't want to manually fuel all the satellites if she could avoid it. After all, if her mana is constantly being drained by the satellites amongst the other things that require her mana, it would be a little annoying. And since I'm going to send satellites up into space, I should have them be able to transform into orbital cannons if possible. What else? All right, the moon. After the system integrated itself with the world, there were no longer any more means to get into space until I made my rocket. If I transform the moon into something that can be of use to me, it'll be good. Plus, if I make a teleport node between the two, I should be able to make a relaxing mini-city for everyone. Shiro thought with a small smile. Say Nantion. Shiro called out. Emin, what is it? What do you think about colonizing the moon? Make it a secondary city for me. Smack an anchor point in the center, and I might even use it to house a weapon. Shiro asked as she snapped her fingers and zoomed in on a hologram of the moon. Pinching the surface of the hologram, buildings started to appear as a transparent dome sealed everything off. Plus, it'll be a pretty good place for a holiday now. Take everyone there and enjoy the look of the world from space. Shiro smiled. Thinking about it, Nantion nodded his head. Sure, quite a few people are infatuated with space here after all. If you want, you can probably hire those people to do some research into blueprints that can take you further into space if you want. Nantion suggested. Perhaps, though, that might have to wait considering there were monsters in space back in Aria. I remember launching some satellites and had to defend them quite often. But with how difficult this world is, there's no doubt that tier SIXS or 7s might be swimming around in that vacuum right now. I don't want to risk it more than I already have. Shiro shrugged. They shouldn't get too greedy just yet. Fair enough. Let's just stick with surrounding the world with satellites as well as making a city on the moon. Nodding her head, Shiro started to adjust some designs of the satellites so that it suited the power level of this world. From more weapons to reinforced barriers powered by runes. Shiro wondered how much mana it'll take her to make sure everything is up and running. In terms of the energy, Shiro wondered if keeping it in low-powered mode would work with just the energy from the sun. Either that or create a power bank in the rift connected to everything. And whenever she has free time, she'll pump all of her mana in it for a few hours and call it a day. After all, with her regeneration, all of her mana will return in just a few minutes. Doing this every day would give them enough mana to power the entire thing for a while. She did wonder if she needed a space station at all, but considering that they can monitor everything pretty easily from the command center, it shouldn't be too hard. But just to make things easier, she'll add a different command center for space-related stuff. I'll take care of the recruitment as well as setting up space for research. You can focus on the fun stuff. Nantion glanced back with a smile since he knew that Shiro found this kind of work boring. Hearing this, Shiro's eyes flickered with joy. Thanks. She grinned. It wasn't like she was thinking of dumping everything to Nantion already. With the two of them doing work at the same time, it reduced the time needed to get everything ready to just 2 hours. With the satellite blueprints ready, Shiro looked down at her hands for a moment before taking a deep breath. Sighing out, she flexed her fingers and created 2 helmets so that they didn't suffocate. I still have a portal node in the room that I made last time. If we teleport through there, we won't need to worry about breaking past the barriers again, Shiro said as her voice was a little quiet. Are you sure? Nantion asked as Shiro nodded. I need to face it eventually, so why not do it now? Plus, I should also clean the place up a little. Nodding his head, Nantion watched as Shiro created a portal before holding onto his sleeve. Taking a step through, the 2 of them were now floating through the wreckage of the room. Parts were scattered about, and chunks were missing. Feeling her body tense up for a moment, Shiro bit her lip and aimed her palm towards everything. Retrieving all of the nanobots that were used here, she closed her eyes. I'll come get you soon. Opening her eyes once more, her gaze was sharp. Letting go of Nantion's sleeve, she floated forward as her mana flared. A golden energy rippled from her body. Clasping 2 hands together, Shiro created a Tier 8 magic circle between her palms with the use of the god runes. Suddenly, thousands upon thousands of Tier 6 magic circles appeared at the area around them. From the ground, this would look just like a simple ray of light from the sheer density of the magic circles. Looking at this happening, Nantion smiled lightly, as it was simply beautiful. With her white hair fluttering behind her from the mana that was being emitted by the Tier 8 magic circle, lightning started to flicker as nanobots appeared in all of the magic circles. One by one, the satellites formed. Their weapons were exposed then concealed. Since it was a satellite system that was supposed to give her sight around the whole world, Shiro decided to name it after a being that very much hated Zeus. After all, he was dragged into the mess of his love affairs and killed in his sleep. As the final module was installed, a single word was painted on the chassis. Argus, named after the all-seeing giant, Argus Panoptes. The Argus satellite network was now ready for deployment. Just as she finished this, a notification appeared on her system. Argus Panoptes raises a toast to Shiro. He expresses great joy in having such a spy network named after him and offers you his blessings. One by one, a golden crest lit up next to the word Argus on each of the satellites. The crest was that of an eye with its pupil replaced by the word Blessing of Panoptes. When searching for something specific, barriers are less likely to obscure your view, and you can get its precise location. Reading this, Shiro smiled and snapped her fingers. Activating their thrusters, the satellites started to spread themselves out so that they can cover the whole world. With the satellite system done, Shiro glanced down at the charred piece of land that was now covered by a lightning storm. A vortex that sucked away all the mana available. What confused her, yet also made her curious, was that it ignored those that were Tier 3 and below. Logically, it would kill them as well since it absorbed all mana, but that was not the case. However, she decided to set this aside for now since she had no more business with this place. Her next goal was to set up a city on the moon. #####. Leaning against the sofa was a handsome man that had both his eyes closed, long black hair, and wore a rather smart suit. Well, isn't this quite the coincidence? Just as you were trying to persuade me to join her side and apologize about your past transgressions, the girl in question had named a rather advanced network after me. The man smiled as the one who sat opposite him raised his eyebrows in surprise. She did, indeed, named it the Argus Satellite Network. I'm a fan of mortal work, but this by far is my favorite. Almost enough for me to forgive you for killing me in my sleep. Hermes. He smirked as one of his eyes opened to reveal a black void that seemed to reflect the entire world. What can I do for you to forgive me and help us in our fight against Zeus? Hermes asked as he squeezed both his hands together. It was going to be hard for Argus to forgive him considering he was the one who killed him. But no matter much, Hermes knew that they needed Argus' help if they wanted to win the fight. His ability of being able to see most, if not everything, was going to be very helpful for gathering information. Without it, their chances of winning decreases drastically. What can you do? I'm not sure if you can afford it, haha. Of course, that's only if it was before the little stunt she pulled. If it was before, I would have asked you for your life. Argus curled the corner of his lips up as he pointed towards his chest. Seeing the pitchback orbs in the place of where normal eyes should be, Hermes couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He could feel the cold-blooded killing intent emanating from this man as hundreds of gazes locked onto his body. Even if it was fast, he could not escape this man's sight. But I'm in quite the good mood after her actions, so I won't ask for something like your life. Argus chuckled as he sat up straight. Hermes, I want you to work for me. No matter what I ask of you, I want you to follow through with them. Of course, I'll give you a bit of mercy due to that last, and I won't ask you to do something as mundane as kill someone, of course. Just help me with doing some miscellaneous tasks. Argus offered. So a butler of sorts? Hermes raised an eyebrow. No, no, no. Calling that a butler is far too kind. I prefer the word slave. Argus narrowed his eyes. Hearing this, Hermes felt like a vein was about to pop from his anger. A slave? Hermes asked as his voice was cold. Yes. Why? Are you unhappy? How do you think I felt when I was killed in my sleep? Argus smirked as Hermes couldn't refute him. Gritting his teeth, he considered his options before sighing. Fine, I agree to being your slave. However, I want to be able to do my own No, if you want that much freedom, then you'll be more of a butler than a slave. As the messenger, I'm sure you don't need me to repeat myself, right? I'm sure you already know that all of you need me more than I need you. The young lass honored me, so I honored her back. You killed me, and logically, I should kill you, but I'm already giving you enough mercy by making you my slave. Argus stood up as he prepared to leave. Seeing this, Hermes slammed his hand down. Fine, but there better be a time limit to this. Sure, how does 100 years sound to you? Argus smiled as he turned around. 100 years was enough for him to get as much enjoyment out of Hermes as possible. Seething in anger, Hermes could only bite the bullet and nod his head. Seeing this, Argus snapped his finger, and a golden contract appeared in the air. Sign it. Sighing softly, Hermes bit his finger and signed his crest in blood. Suddenly, chains appeared around him as a cuff appeared around his neck. Gah! Crying out in pain, lightning started to flicker as the contract rolled up into a scroll and landed in Argus' hand. Perfect. You are now my slave for the next 100 years. Show me to this meeting of yours, little slave. Argus said as Hermes nodded his head, creating a portal in front of them. They both stepped through with Hermes following behind Argus. Finding himself at the doorway of a giant room that towered over him, Argus raised his eyebrows and looked towards the center. There was a single room, and quite a few gods could be spotted, with the one in the center being Hades. Seems like Hermes has persuaded you to join us. Hades smiled as Argus nodded his head. Somewhat. If it wasn't for the lass he mentioned honoring my name with something quite interesting, I wouldn't have agreed, even if he paid for it with his life. Argus smiled as he tugged his hand, and a chain manifested, connecting to the collar around Hermes' neck. Seeing this, Hades raised an eyebrow as Hermes could only grit his teeth. But setting that aside, shall we talk business? All I know right now is that you want to kill Zeus faction for good. They're collaborating with a few gods outside of this pantheon, no? Argus asked as Hades nodded his head. Yes, the main targets in Zeus faction is Zeus himself and Poseidon. They're the biggest targets. Ares has agreed to fight with us since he's not a fan of Zeus or Poseidon. Hades replied. I can see that, considering that there are quite a few familiar faces around here. Though I have to ask, who is this girl next to you? She's not a face that I've seen, nor does she have the aura of a god. Demigod at most, but not a god, and even then, demigod is pushing it. This one is called Asakura Mio, mother of Asakura Shiro. She's on her way to becoming a demigod. Hades introduced with a smile. Narrowing his eyes, Argus paused in surprise. You actually sent a mortal to the path of divinity? The fact that she's standing here is a miracle, and you want her to complete the rest of the path to forcefully ascend to demigod status? Are you trying to kill a talented individual out of haste? Argus asked with a frown. No, I'm not. You understand that since I sent her, I have a chance to pull her out if things get bad, right? Hades asked as Argus nodded his head. The key is that even after how long she's spent on the path, I have not used this yet. She still has one extra life, if you were to call it that. Hades said as Argus looked at Mio in disbelief. Take off your hood. Let me get a good look at you. Argus said as he opened both of his eyes fully. Hearing this, Mio glanced over at Hades, who only nodded. Reaching up with her hand, she pulled her hood down and allowed him to see her face. Narrowing his eyes, Argus smiled. Your path is long, just like your daughter. I must say, you two mother and daughter pair are quite interesting. Argus smiled as he leaned down. Thank you. Mio bowed slightly. All right. Setting that aside for now, what do you need me to do? I'm quite interested in seeing Zeus' death. Argus smiled, taking a seat around the table. ####. Flying to the moon wasn't too difficult. It was just a case of flying towards the giant rock floating in space. What was difficult is what they found on the surface. You know what this is? Shiro asked. When they reached the moon, they were greeted with a similar barrier to Earth, so breaking through it wasn't too difficult. However, when they did, they saw a giant gate fused into the moon's surface. The door pointed straight towards the earth while runic patterns and images were carved around it. Do you think it's a dungeon? Nantion asked as Shiro shrugged. Not sure. The runes aren't exactly the ones that a dungeon uses. If anything, it's closer to the ones that are etched to a raid door. Shiro replied since she had never seen a gate of this size before. Should we leave it for now or? I'll set a few scouts down for now. Let them monitor this place before we turn it into a holiday home. If it turns out to be something troublesome, I don't want to drag the people in the city into this. Shiro said as she waved her hand. Nanobots started to gather around her as they formed into tiny robots that descended towards the surface. But the moment they touched down, they were crushed by an invisible force. Seeing this, Shiro narrowed her eyes, creating a nanotech avatar of herself, the same one she used during the first event. Shiro sent it down towards the surface. Upon reaching the surface, the same pressure appeared. Furrowing her brows, Shiro was glad to find out that it wasn't an instant kill, but rather the drones couldn't hold themselves together. Since her avatar was stronger, it was able to move around despite the problems. Seems like the pressure of the moon isn't something that can be survived by anyone lower than Tier 5. Hell, I think that's putting it lightly. For a good chance, you'd have to be Tier 6. Shiro muttered. That bad? Nantion furrowed his brows. But strangely enough, my avatar is not affected by that pressure when it detaches itself from the moon. Shiro muttered. Suddenly, a notification appeared on her system. You have discovered the Gates of Rokarn. Gates of Rokarn. Shiro muttered in confusion. Wanting to get some more information on the actual place, Shiro commanded her avatar to go investigate the entrance some more. Placing her hand against the door, a shockwave exploded out and destroyed her avatar in a second. No avatars are allowed within the gates. Receiving this response, Shiro narrowed her eyes. That's quite strange. The fact that there is a raid or dungeon on the moon of all places is strange enough as it is. Shiro frowned as Nantion looked at the gate with caution. Perhaps the gods might have an answer. They probably do, but the problem is that sending a message costs quite a bit. Shiro shook her head. However, just as she said this, her system gave her another notification. Goddess Gaia states no price is considered expensive when it comes to you. Goddess Gaia also states that they do indeed have information on the being known as Rokarn. He was a demigod that brought them quite a bit of trouble from one of the earlier gardens. They don't know what had happened to him after their battle, but I didn't expect him to become a dungeon that was situated on the moon. Demigod Rokarn, the Isharian demigod of chaos and slaughter. He was a step away from attaining godhood, but was prevented by Hades as well as some help from Rokarn's siblings. Lia, the Ishari goddess of life, as well as Kal, the Ishari god of death. Even with so many gods trying to stop him, he still managed to kill 4 of us before running away. Goddess Gaia states that if he has transformed into a dungeon, then the dungeon itself is demigod status, perhaps even God considering his power. Reading this, Shiro furrowed her brows. Gaia, are you able to send me some information about the Ishari gods? This might be a great opportunity for everyone once they reach Tier 6. Shiro asked. Goddess Gaia says of course, anything for you, and expresses great interest in marriage. Right after reading this message, Shiro received a giant document of Gaia explaining all of the Ishari gods, lesser gods, demigods, and their relations. Quickly scanning the whole document so that she could read it later, Shiro turned to Nantion. Let's go back for now. I'm not exactly excited about challenging a demigod dungeon/raid right now, especially if the final boss could be someone that supposedly killed 4 gods while being ambushed. Shiro said as Nantion nodded his head. Not exactly the place for a holiday, is it? He chuckled as Shiro rolled her eyes, making a portal for them to go back to the command center for now. She didn't notice a small screen that appeared in front of the gate. Dungeon break countdown has begun. Time remaining, 6 months. ######. Making their way back to the command center, the two of them sat down as Shiro handed him a copy of all the information so that they could both read it. Similar to the Greek pantheon, the Ishari gods were structured in a similar manner with the main gods in the main pantheon. Demigods and other offspring are classified separately. The Ishari gods originated from one of the previous gardens. They're also known as the defeated pantheon since they tried to make a stand against the other gods but failed. After that, they were classified as lesser deities with very little influence in the Hall of Divine. Rokarn, Lia, Kal, and Balthanox are the children of the primordial titans back in that garden. They are the equivalent to Zeus, Hades, Ares, and so on. While Lia, Kal and Balthanox were able to attain godhood thanks to their parents. Rokarn was set aside due to his divinities. Fearful of what he may become, his parents neglected him and obstructed his progress no matter what he did. Eventually, that only caused his divinity to fester and grow with his hatred. After killing his parents, the primordial titans of that garden, Rokarn fled from the pantheon before Balthanox. Ishari, god of storms and justice, could make him pay for his crimes. Having several off-sprints himself, Rokarn sent his children to terrorize the New Age, killing anyone they set their eyes on. Eventually, the three were known as the world bosses due to their strength and how they were able to claim large parts of the garden for themselves. Once the second part of the New Age began, the Ishari gods immediately sought to put an end to Rokarn with the help of the other pantheons, including the Greek pantheon. Despite only being a demigod, he has powers equal in strength to the primordials like Gaia and Nyx. Due to the strength of his divinity, even gods had to be wary of making the wrong move. Even if it was not the real chaos divinity, it still shared parts of its properties. Shiro muttered, reading the end of the first page. However, even with the power of his chaos divinity, the goddess Chaos still holds a special place within the system. Out of everyone they know, Chaos has the highest authority thus far, even higher than the administrators. Nantion followed up as Shiro massaged her eyes. The fact that a demigod with the power of chaos is resting his ass on our moon is quite the problematic situation, isn't it? If I'm being honest, I still think there's a good chance for me to fight him if I'm in peak condition. However, there's too much we don't know, and I have no experience in the fighting between gods, how the clash of divinities work, and so on. If I go in blindly thinking I can end things in just a few minutes with my skill activated, there's a 100% chance that I'll just die. Shiro sighed. Let's take things slowly for now. Rather than rushing towards this dungeon, let's think about this event first. Right now, the main targets in this event are the Beast Queen, the Dragon Empress, and one unknown queen that has just taken over the other main zone. Both the Beast Queen and this unknown have two main zones, and they're quite high up on the leaderboard in terms of points gained. Nantion reported as Shiro crossed her legs. Let's target Theria. I still remember that my future self cautioned me about her, so let's get rid of her. I know that we've let her run free for a while now, but that will end soon. We'll launch a few skirmishes with camouflaged mechs with snipers. Try to weaken her over, and see if I can force her to summon that weird Leviathan Hydra of hers. For this, I'll have to rely on everyone else, because if I enter his storms, let's just say having a storm powered by 300 trillion plus points of mana would not be fun. Shiro said as she leaned against her hand. That's fine. Considering our firepower, having you as a support gunner would be too much overkill already. With how many tier SIXS we have, it shouldn't be too difficult. Nantion chuckled. They have Lysandra who gets a huge power boost as long as it is something ordered by Shiro. Aram who has a huge bonus to her spells thanks to Shiro's INT stat, and more. Everyone in the main party has been upgraded by Shiro's divine court titles to the point that each of them could destroy a country if they wished. Remembering what they were a year ago, Nantion couldn't help but chuckle. So much progress in a year. But considering their feats, it wasn't a surprise they'll grow this much. What are you laughing about? Shiro asked curiously. Nothing much, just thinking back to what you accomplished in the year. From a mute snow girl to being a demigoddess. Nantion smiled as Shiro shrugged. True, though if I didn't get strong this quickly we would be in trouble right now. Talking for a little longer, they started to plan out their moves for tomorrow. Their main goal was to weaken Theria's forces all the way until the final day where they strike, and, in the meantime, they'll also be conquering the lands near them. The only queen close to them right now was the one with a sword and eye. Once she defeats her, she would have claimed all 3 zones for this section. The other sections are further out, and it would most likely take more than a day considering the travel time along with fighting multiple forces. However, what confused Shiro was that there was no movement from the neighboring queen just yet. Considering 2 zones being captured near her, she was awfully calm. Shiro wasn't sure if the queen was brave or dumb since she had seen her fair share of people. Plus, there was also the chance of her hiding something. Regardless, they launched the first attack in the middle of the night. If things go right, they'll have a 3rd zone by sunrise.